All right, we are live and we are late.
But the
I,
show must go on.
yes,
Yeah, life happens.
I'm on my
Yes.
phone. My computer basically is dying on me. Kim's in her car and
Technology is on strike today. It's all that
technology
Well,
is on
AI, man. They're
strike.
well,
So
we have to remember why we're doing this. We're doing this as a study club for us, and then people can look in and watch, and they can
yeah.
participate, and that's the fun of it. So,
Yep.
Yep. Yep,
it's okay.
definitely. Yeah. All right.
It
Well,
is all good.
I'm gonna go ahead and launch our intro and then we'll get going.
Okay.
Boom.
All right. Now I hope that my phone is charged well enough well enough to get
Oh Lord, don't zap out on us.
I may need to run over and get another cord to keep it charged, but I just don't even know where I put that card. So I recently got an upgraded phone.
Uh-huh.
So my iPhone went from a 12 Pro to a 15 Pro. And of course, Apple has to change the little, port from a lightning to a USB-C.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, huh.
And they send, they always send a new charging cord, right? But the
Uh-huh.
USB-C charging cord that they sent doesn't even have a little thing that you can plug it into the wall. You can only plug it into a computer. And so
Really?
yeah, so I ordered a whole bunch of them that have the USB connector on one side and the USB-C on the other side. And now I don't even know where my one that I got with the phone went. And so I'm like, okay, I want to plug this into the computer so I won't conk out in the middle of this live stream. And I have no idea where it is.
Hey, we
Ah,
are just
Oh
keeping it real,
well.
folks. Keeping it real. This is
Listen,
it.
people know us by now, I think.
I think so too.
I mean, like we're the gals that you can just hang out with, be yourself, prop your feet
Right.
up,
That's
just
right. This
chill.
is supposed to be fun. So no
Yep.
sweat. Don't even worry about it, Lynn. You look beautiful. Everything's great.
Yep.
Oh, well,
And
thank you.
welcome to the back of the Suburban.
Yes. And Sandra says on time for once, and then we're late.
It's okay. We're all
It's
good.
1:40 a.m. in the future
Oh my
there.
goodness.
Yeah, because she's
I
in
Wow.
know.
Aussie.
She said 5:40. Wow.
Yeah, 5:40 a.m.
So
there.
my goodness. So wow. Okay. So I'm wondering if I should kind of let you two talk for a minute while I go find my cord.
That's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
We can
I'll be
hey, we
back.
can talk.
You guys can go look at my back wall for a moment, and I'm gonna
Okay.
go see if I can find my charging cord.
You got a pretty paint job back there.
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
nice.
It's my daughter. It used to be her room.
So Carrie, what have you been up to?
Oh, well, today I've been dealing with technical difficulties through work. So, I mean, this is a breeze.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
um, but I'm so excited about just the experience I had at the Low Carb for Better Health and something
Yeah,
that is
tell us about
relevant.
that.
Yeah, something that is relevant to this discussion is that I got to meet Amy Berger, who wrote the Alzheimer's chapter in
Yeah.
this ketogenic textbook. And I had talked to her. Well, they had like where you could come up, and I was thankful. I raised my hand, and they did pick me to come up and say something. So I, you know, thanked the group, for being so just inspirational and everything. But then I said, Amy Berger, and I said, you wrote a piece 10 years ago called Vitamin J that just really impacted me. And I said, I just wanted to thank you for that. I'm very blessed to have the opportunity that I can tell you that. And I think it surprised her because that was like a blast from the past,
Yeah.
and she approached me, after the panel discussion. And so we got to talking. And so she has agreed to appear on our book club, and for this, like if we
Oh,
wanted to
wow.
talk with her about the Alzheimer's chapter.
Oh, that is so cool. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. She is really like, man, I mean, she's awesome. I've listened to her a lot, and just like over the years, I have kind of followed her, here and there. And she's just so smart. She's just
Oh
such an
yeah.
intelligent woman. She knows her stuff. I would love to talk to her.
She's
That'd be
just
awesome.
so vibrant too,
Yeah,
and
she really is.
it comes through, and she does want to help, and she's very encouraging, and she doesn't she does. I'm not going to say she doesn't tolerate, but I mean, it's like people who act perfect all the time or expect perfection all the time. She doesn't.
Well, that ain't me now.
Right. And she doesn't have patience for that because we're all
Yeah,
human. And her talk
same.
was really good. She was talking about like how consistency is the most important thing. So strive to be consistent and not perfect, and to
Yeah.
talk to yourself better. Like, don't talk to yourself like, somebody who hated you would talk. She says, is that
Or
helpful?
or your parents in a even though they had good intentions, sometimes we hear our parents, you know, and it wasn't necessarily bad, but it's like, that 80s style of parenting, 70s and 80s style of parenting.
And
It's
sometimes I
just
will
it's
open
just
my mouth and
different.
my mama flops out, it's
Yes.
just,
Yes.
All
Yeah,
right.
for me it was more like,
I was
what?
just gonna
I'm
say
sorry, Lynn.
I was just gonna say I'm all plugged in now. So
Okay,
whenever you
good.
guys are ready.
Yeah. I was just going to say, for me, it was more my dad. Like, I adored that man, but he was stern, and I hear his voice in my head a lot, and I have to just be like, okay, is that you or is that dad?
mm-hmm.
you know,
Maybe a little bit of both.
maybe a little bit of both.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it's my mom. I heard her voice in my head for so long. And it was, my mom she kind of gave her own complexes and insecurities about herself,
Mhm.
like from a physical standpoint. She transferred onto me.
Yeah.
And because I kind of look like her. And so anything that she didn't like about herself, like what as a child growing up, she would always comment, oh, well, you don't want to emphasize this particular body part, and it made me feel insecure, like,
Oh.
whereas I wouldn't have otherwise, because, as kids, we don't really pay close attention to that, right? But
Mm-hmm.
because I heard it from her, I became self-conscious.
Yeah.
And, to this day, there's still things that I'm like, really like especially when someone's trying to take a picture, it's like, okay, well, don't take it from this angle or that angle and stuff. And it's my mom in my head, you know?
And it's a shame because I feel like a lot of our parents, they had good intentions with that.
Oh
And
yeah.
I catch myself doing it, like trying to, like, I have my own hangups, from childhood and from adulthood, quite frankly. And I'll try to pass that on to my children, like, oh, well, you don't want to do this, do that,
Yeah.
And it's a lot of times it's coming from a more just me perspective. And I need to like chill with that.
Yeah. I know each generation does it.
Yeah.
We try not to pass on what we got from our parents, but then we pass on new things to our
Yeah.
kids.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And we're doing the best we can. Most of
Yes,
us are trying to anyway.
it's just, how are we gonna, I mean, the alternative, I think, is just not sharing our feelings. And I don't think
Yeah,
that's a good thing either.
I don't
Right.
either.
So, yeah. All right. Okay. Are you guys ready to get going?
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. So sorry, everybody. I'm glad we got some people here,
Mhm.
being very patient with our, misfunctional
I
Oh my
feel like
goodness.
I'm so far back here that you guys can't see me. Is it
Oh,
okay?
Yeah, it's
yeah, we
good.
can
Okay.
hear
Yeah.
you. We can hear you.
Oh, good.
And yeah, so I guess it's a good thing I've got my new iPhone because at least it works.
Yeah,
And it has
that's
a
good
great
quality.
camera. That's the
My old,
thing about these
yeah,
newer phones too. The
Yeah.
cameras are spot on.
it does have a good camera. So you guys are gonna
Really
have to
right
help
on.
me if I miss oh hi, Alia's
Hey,
here.
oh yeah.
Awesome. Good to see you, Alia. Awesome.
Hey.
Very good. All righty. So Analia is on our Healing Humanity team, and so we guys see her every week on our team meetings. But awesome. Okay, so we'll listen while cooking.
Awesome.
Awesome. Very good.
Mm.
Okay. All righty. So, and just Alia, since you just joined, we were a little dysfunctional today. We got started late, and then my computer's not working, so I'm on my phone. I'm gonna have less of an opportunity to like respond in the comments. I can pop comments in and out, but can't like I can't respond. So like
Yeah.
type anything. So you guys are gonna have to carry that part for
Okay.
me. Okay. All right. I guess I can start today. So we are
Okay.
on section 1.3.7, which is titled Response of the American Medical Association to the USDA Dietary Goals for Americans. And we didn't even let everybody, anyone who's new, know what we're doing. We're going through this textbook. It is a very big textbook, and it's called Ketogenic, the Science of Therapeutic Carbohydrate Restriction in Human Health. And unlike a book club where we read ahead and then discuss, this is a study club, and we are reading as we go and discussing as we go. So if you ever wanted to read through this book and you're overwhelmed and feel like you just can't stomach it, you can just listen to us.
And at the
That's okay.
very least, you can laugh at me when I stumble over some of those long technical words.
Oh yeah, it is completely just like three nerdy chicks trying to
Yeah.
stumble through this material. We mispronounce words. So alrighty, so I'm going to get started on this particular section. So the American Medical Association also produced a response to the dietary goals. It began, and then there's a quote here: "It would be inappropriate at this time to adopt the proposed national dietary goals as the evidence for assuming that benefits to be derived from adoption of such universal dietary goals is not conclusive, and there is a potential for harmful effects from a radical long-term dietary change as would occur through the adoption of the proposed national goals." So the AMA presented the opinion that the evidence linking the American diet with a variety of different diseases, including coronary heart disease, is quote unquote suggestive, fragmentary, and often conflicting. Next quote: "It is not proven that dietary modifications can prevent atherosclerotic heart disease in man. It is not known that the demonstration of such a proof could or would find general applicability in our society. In the absence of conclusive proof on the diet heart question, any dietary advice to the American public will always lack authenticity and authority, will be conducive to half measures, and will meet opposition that cannot be effectively countered." I'm actually really surprised that they actually had this statement. Are you guys going, wow? Like,
Yeah, I'm surprised that the AMA did, but I think of all of the organizations, like we know where the AHA was, and likewise the ADA.
right.
So I think that,
I
the
rest.
American Medical Association, I think they're probably not quite as quick to maybe jump on a bandwagon, although things have certainly changed.
Well, that was my thought. It's like I doesn't really say here what year this was. Um, so obviously it's not recent because they have really changed, and
Hmm.
they seem to jump on bandwagons very quickly now. Or slow in some areas, but some others are pretty fast. And they've definitely changed their tune when it comes to the dietary guidelines.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the AMA committee was equally unimpressed by the evidence linking high dietary fat intakes and cancer of the colon. Now, another quote, while epidemiological data show a correlation between high fat intake and cancer of the colon, the case against high fat intake is weak because there are populations that have a high fat intake but little bowel cancer. Yeah, duh. So the committee also rejected any proven links between high fat diets and cancer of the breast. Similarly, the committee found no evidence to support the reduction in salt intake to reduce the prevalence of hypertension. We were just talking about this last week.
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
argued that dietary management of type 2 diabetes and obesity should both focus on calorie restriction on an individual basis. And now we know that that doesn't work either, but I guess that was their focus back then. So another quote, adoption of national dietary goals is not an answer to obesity and could prove detrimental if followed by individuals properly requiring medical supervision for their particular condition. So their final conclusion was that the AMA, quote, does not consider it appropriate for the government to adopt national goals that specify such matters as the amount and proportions of total fat, type of fat, sugar, cholesterol, or salt content in the diets of the general public as these national goals advocate. So rather, persons should be treated in individual programs that promote decreased caloric intake and increased physical activity for those with obesity or at risk of its development. As a result, we, the AMA committee, urged that the report not be adopted. So that was their conclusion. And I mean, we know that their whole calorie restriction, increased physical activity didn't play out to be correct either.
Right.
Um, but it was interesting to note that they were against the national guidelines. So I'm assuming that we're going to read about how they got pushed to the side and they ended up getting adopted anyways.
It looks like there has been significant questioning. And of course, when you go back to the McGovern hearings too, there's footage that you can find online that, of where there was heated discussion and disagreement about it. So
I want to watch those.
yes. Tom Naughton in his documentary Fathead has some footage, I believe. And he has another video, and it's about something about the science is the name of it, that also has some of that footage in there. And he was a comedian by trade. And so he was in entertainment. And so he did a really good job in incorporating humor into it. So it's not a boring, sciencey, technical thing. It's easily digested by just a regular person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So nice to have Russ on here for some comic
Yeah.
relief. So for those of you who are just listening and not watching, Russ made a comment. I'm starting a GoFundMe for Kim. I hate to see her living in her car. The struggle is real.
Yeah.
I only have a Suburban to live in, Russ. It's really sad.
At least it's not a Fiat.
Oh,
Look, I've got this living room back here. It's totally untouched.
It's spacious, right?
that's awesome.
That's funny. All right. Okay, Carrie. And the next section is really long. So read whatever you feel like reading, and then Kim can pick up.
Okay, 1.3.8, subsequent iterations of the USDA dietary goals for Americans. The dietary goals continue to be modified every 5 years, not much. However, the advice to eat less animal fat and protein and more carbohydrate in the form of grains and cereals remains immutable. The goals continue to attract relentless criticism. In a hard-hitting review published in 2010, Haidt et al. Concluded, although appealing to an evidence-based methodology, the DGAC report demonstrates several critical weaknesses, including use of an incomplete body of relevant science, inaccurately representing, interpreting, or summarizing the literature, and drawing conclusions and or making recommendations that do not reflect the limitations or controversies in the science. As objective assessment of evidence in the DGAC report does not suggest a conclusive proscription against low carbohydrate diets. The DGAC report does not provide sufficient evidence to conclude that increase in whole grain and fiber and decrease in dietary saturated fat, salt, and animal protein will lead to positive health outcomes. Lack of supporting evidence limits the value of the proposed recommendations as guidance for consumers or as the basis for public health policy. It is time to re-examine how U.S. dietary guidelines are created and ask whether the current process is still appropriate for our needs. Amen. I mean, I agree with
Yeah.
that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not it's nice that they recognize this, but it didn't seem to do any good.
No. So, following the publication of the 2015 guidelines, Haidt and Schoenfeld again argued that the guidelines had failed to achieve positive health outcomes for the American public.
Right.
Instead, the authors proposed that these recommendations have contributed to the increase of chronic diseases, widening the health divide between minority and white Americans, are not compatible with adequate essential nutrition, do not reflect the biological, socioeconomic, or cultural diversity of Americans, are based on weak, limited, and inconclusive scientific data. Boy, they've got a bunch of bullet points here,
Yeah.
and have expanded their purpose to issues beyond their original mandate while failing to provide clear nutrition guidance to the general public. And yes, that's true. There is more of an agenda. There are other things that's playing into these dietary recommendations, like reducing your consumption of meat or eliminating your consumption of meat.
Right.
So
Right.
that's
And
right.
you know, and government's been involved for too long, I think, in our nutrition. I mean, I personally don't believe that the role of our federal government is nutrition for our public. I think that that's an individual thing between a patient and their doctor and your own decision making. And it just seems like whenever government gets in the middle of things that's not really what their role should be, it ends up getting messed up. I mean, I remember even, you know, as growing up, I would hear my parents, and my parents were always talking political stuff, right? And politics was often discussed in our household. But one of the things, my dad was a World War II veteran, so they were extremely patriotic. And, you know, he fought for our country and he was in the military for 30 years. And but they were always talking about the role of the federal government and really just wanted it to be very limited to what we needed, you know, national defense and international relations, and leave stuff like this alone, you know. And I grew up hearing that, you know, whenever the federal government dips their fingers into things, it becomes inefficient. It becomes, you know, we spend too much of our taxpayer dollars and then it ends up not working. You
And
know?
then when it doesn't work, they say we have to try harder. So
Yeah, they
we
double
didn't,
down.
yeah, so the people didn't follow our instructions, or maybe we need to increase those healthy whole grains
Yeah,
and decrease the fat, you know, not eat meat at all. Just they
yeah.
just keep making it
So
more and more stringent.
So
Yeah.
while I understand the need for the overreach of the government, basically, I understand because we have, you know, programs that we have to make sure, you know, are on a certain standard. Like, for example, you know, nursing homes,
Mm-hmm.
schools, things like that, the military food, everything like that. So I totally get why the government needs to have its hand in this. But I just think that it's just so biased, you know, and it's just so like it's just so heavily influenced by non-science, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and that's unfortunate. Um, so I don't know what the answer is, honestly.
Yeah, it's difficult because I think that people who go into politics and want to form policy, I think I tend to be giving people the benefit of the doubt
Mm-hmm.
and think that when they go into it, they are going into it because they want to serve and they have good motives and they want to help the American public. And if whatever country you're in, help, be helpful. And unfortunately, so we see so often how the lobbyists and everything, the greed sets in, right?
Yeah.
Well,
The
and there's a
money corrupts
system.
everything.
Money
It's
corrupts
it's like
everything.
instead of the absolute power corrupts absolutely, well, that's true too, but the
Yeah.
absolute money, the
Yeah.
money corrupts everything absolutely. It just
Yeah.
does. It seeps into every nook and cranny. And then before you know it, even people with good intentions
Yeah.
are swayed, you know.
That's right.
Or they are pressured.
Mhm.
Like, in other words, like if I went in, let's say, and I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and I wanted to change things, and there are politicians who have done that and they have
Yeah.
suffered the consequences for it. They get smeared in the media, they get attacked,
Yeah.
because they're not a part of that established, um, the establishment. They're not a
Yeah.
part of that. And so and it's like, oh, no, no, you don't understand. It doesn't work this way. You have to do it this way.
Yeah.
And if you don't last very long.
And most
Yeah.
So,
politicians, regardless of what side of the aisle they're
mhm.
on, most politicians, they can initiate whatever they want, but by the time it gets down to the people that actually are going to vote on it, the lobbyists have come in and gotten in their ears. So
Right.
it's just there. We would have to make so many laws around things like that I don't know if I ever see us getting there.
I don't either. I feel bad about it, but I don't know. I kind of feel like we've gone so far down the rabbit hole of greed and that I don't know how we can dig ourselves back out of it,
Yeah, I don't either.
And I mean, but I think we all need to try to have some hope, and I guess the thing that could potentially do it is the people, right? I mean,
Yeah,
at
I think
some
it's just
point,
one person at a time.
yeah,
Just us talking to people, people talking to each other, one medical professional at a time, learning the truth.
right.
And I have something to tell you guys. I almost forgot. So, y'all, I was overjoyed a few days ago. Okay. I'm taking care of a patient. It is actually a physician's family member. Okay. I can't tell
Mhm.
too much, obviously,
Yeah.
but I mean, I'm not revealing anything here. And it's not even about the patient, but it was a physician's family member. Okay. So that physician came to meet the surgeon in the hallway and they were standing kind of outside of the patient's room. Well, I'm standing right there charting and taking care of my other patient. So I hear them talking about changing the patient's diet. Um, and I don't want to go too far into it, but he had a metabolic disease process, okay, that had caused him to have a surgery, right? So his daughter, who is a surgeon there, is talking to another surgeon about changing his diet and eliminating added sugar and so then the surgeon that did the surgery, he says, well, it's ironic that you mentioned this because this is actually something I've been looking into doing some research on. And like he goes into his phone and he had a word, or not a word document, but like a document of a lot of different topics that he's looking into and researching, or researching on his own basically,
Mhm.
that he's wanting to do something with. And I'm just like, I can't contain myself. I
Oh my
can't
God.
I can't not interrupt here. Like it was crazy. I turned around and I was just like, you know, and he glanced over my way and I'm like, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but this is like my passion. Like this is what I do outside of here. Like
Right.
almost 24/7 when I'm not here. And he's like, oh yeah, what? And so I start telling him, well, come to find out, the patient's family member that wasn't the surgeon, another family member, we were talking about how, natural food, low sugar, stuff like that. She's a vegan.
Really?
And we were finding commonalities in
Yeah.
us. And, I was just telling them my truth. I mean, I'm not going to pretend like I'm not a carnivore.
Right.
I am. And I told her, I said, I've been trying to, here and there, I've been trying to add things back, and I just haven't been able to. Like, I want to, I just haven't been able to. And I said, but my body, and I told her everything that I have, cured essentially, or reversed, which pre-diabetes and chronic candida and like all the things, I have stuff on my channel if you're interested in that. But it was so miraculous to me, because it was like, finally this like attending, this attending neurosurgeon, okay, is standing there talking to an attending cardiothoracic surgeon, and they're talking about low sugar, low carb
Diet.
diet, metabolic health. I'm like,
Wow.
oh, good. I'm so like, I'm
That
just
gives hope.
overjoyed.
Yeah. That
It
gives
gives me
hope.
hope. It
That
really does.
that's awesome. Well, and yeah, and I think that is what it's going to take is one person at a time, and we have to remember we're consumers, and
Mhm.
ultimately if it's about money, we decide where we channel our funnel our money,
Yeah.
and if enough people stop buying the unhealthy food, then the lobbyists are going to have to change their course.
Yeah. Because they really don't care about specifically making us unhealthy. They just want to get the most money.
Right. Right. They're
So,
hired to promote whatever the food industry wants them to promote.
yeah.
And the food industry is promoting what they sell, because people are buying it.
Hmm. Yeah.
So one person at
So,
a time, we just got to stop buying this stuff.
yeah, it gave me a little bit of hope, and it
I love
also,
that.
it also made me realize that, like, you know, my diet doesn't have to be perfect, but it makes me reflect on exactly how far I've come in like
Yeah.
a year and a half. I mean, it's like night and day. And I need to stop expecting things to just be like perfect, I need to give myself a little bit of leeway here.
I love this because you went from last week crying to
Don't tell anybody.
now you're hopeful.
It's only out on the internet forever.
Yeah, it's not like I'm letting the cat out of the bag here.
Yeah, I'm very hopeful. I am.
I
And
love it.
I'm probably a little bit hormonal, and that's probably a little bit of why it made me teary. But
Oh,
but those
okay.
are my true feelings. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
there's a lot of mental suffering that comes along with you know health and wellness and diet and making huge changes. You think that the hardest thing is avoiding the donuts. No, the hardest thing is controlling what's in between your ears.
Mhm.
Right.
But anyway, I didn't want to get off track, guys, but I
Oh no,
had
you
to
don't.
tell
Are
you
you
guys that.
kidding? That's the theme. That's what we do. We go off track.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
All
but
right.
there's hope. There is
Yeah.
hope.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. All right, Carrie.
Okay, so along the same lines, James DiNicolatino, D Farm, that must be a company, I'm not sure. Zoe Harcum,
I think there's a
oh,
doctor
never
and a
mind,
pharmacist. Yeah, he was a
that's his,
pharmacist.
okay, that's his profession or
Yeah.
whatever.
Oh, yeah, that's his title,
His doctor of pharmacy, I
Doctor of
presume is
Pharmacy.
what that is.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Zoe Harcum, PhD, and James O'Keefe, MD, argued that the following four of the 2015 guidelines lack sound scientific evidence, allowing approximately half of all grains to be refined, the continued recommendation for fat-free or low-fat dairy and limitation of saturated fat to less than 10% of calories, sodium intake of less than 2,300 milligrams a day, and consumption of up to 27 grams a day of oils high in polyunsaturated fat or monounsaturated fat. Their specific criticisms were the following. Increasing the intake of grains will likely lead to a decrease in HDL and increase in triglycerides, small dense LDL, insulin resistance, obesity, and hence increase the risk of metabolic syndrome, diabetes, dyslipidemia, obesity, atherosclerosis, and cardiovascular disease. Reducing the intake of full-fat dairy and saturated fat will likely increase the intake of refined carbohydrates and sugar, increasing the risk of diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular disease, while increasing the risk for fat-soluble vitamin deficiencies. Reducing salt intake activates the renin-angiotensin aldosterone system as well as sympathetic nervous system. This effect is likely harmful. Rather than advising the consumption of omega-6 vegetable oils, it would be better to advise an increased intake of natural fats, nuts, and olive oil. Their conclusion is that the best advice is to eat natural foods, meat, fish, eggs, dairy products, avocados, nuts, and seeds, and the natural saturated and unsaturated fats contained therein. Their predictions have all proven to be remarkably prescient, certainly much more accurate than the incorrect 1977 guesses of Senate McGovern's, I think that's a typo, of McGovern's Senate
Probably
committee.
Senator. Yeah, it's probably
Yeah, I think it'd be Senator McGovern's Senate committee.
Yeah.
So critiquing the same guidelines, cardiologist at the Cleveland Clinic, Dr. Stephen E. Neeson, labeled the guidelines a nearly evidence-free zone.
Love that.
I love the shade that scientists throw, you know?
Oh, man, that's great. That's great. And proposed that it is time to transition from the current evidence-free zone to an era where dietary recommendations are based on the same quality of evidence that we demand in other fields of medicine.
That's cool that it's a guy, somebody from Cleveland Clinic, because they're such a prestigious, clinic, and they have a lot of influence. So it's good to hear that there's somebody there that's thinking clearly.
Yeah.
Oh, and then look here. Another extensive body of criticism came from Nina Teicholz. You go, girl.
Author of Nina.
Yes. Author of the pivotal book, The Big Fat Surprise. In an opinion piece published in the British Medical Journal, Teicholz makes the following key points. The latest dietary guidelines for Americans are imminent and will affect the diets of millions of citizens, as well as food labeling, education, and research priorities. In the past, most Western nations have adopted similar dietary advice. The scientific committee advising the U.S. government has not used standard methods for most of its analyses and instead relies heavily on systematic reviews from professional bodies such as the American Heart Association and the American College of Cardiology, which are heavily supported by food and drug companies.
That is key.
Yep. Because, well, there again, I mean, you don't bite the hand that feeds you, right?
Right. And that's exactly what we're talking about. It's like, well, the money is funneling in and influencing the creating bias in these associations.
And they ignore evidence that would go against what their agenda is. So the committee members, who are not required to list their potential conflicts of interest, also conducted ad hoc reviews of the literature without defining criteria for identifying or evaluating studies.
Okay, why are they not required to list their conflicts of interest?
That's a good question, Lynn. I was wondering that myself.
Right. I mean, we rely, in medical community relies on the American Heart Association, the American College of Cardiology. And don't you think that clinicians would like to know if there's a conflict of interest?
I mean, I would think.
I would think.
It seems to be that the way I think and the way it's actually done is rarely ever the same. So
isn't that the truth?
But I wonder how many medical professionals even know that they're not required to list their conflicts of interest, and they just assume that they have none because none are listed.
Or they just don't ever think about it,
Right.
or that these interests are so embedded in their education and in, like, for example, like the pharmaceutical companies or the food companies or whatever. I mean, they sponsor medical trainings now. I mean, you're getting
Yeah.
educated. It's considered education when,
Right.
quite frankly, I don't see how that could be education. I mean, if you've got somebody from Pfizer, let's say, or any of them teaching classes on how to manage or how to fight disease or treat disease. I mean, it's
Yeah.
a drug. So there, if there's a dietary intervention, they're not going to recommend that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's all so intertwined that they probably just don't even think about it being a conflict. And it should be listed, but I just don't think that they really think about the fact that they were educated by these, or
Yeah.
because of that it's just so common
And the
in their
pharmaceutical
world.
companies are still very actively involved in physician education, past
Mm-hmm.
medical and nurse. I used to go frequently. Um, One of the pharmaceutical companies would invite all the doctors and nurses in my department to go, and they totally splurge on these
Mm-hmm.
amazing meals, feed us, really amazing food. Well, back then I thought it was amazing, but it was definitely full of carbs, and they like open bar and, you know,
Yeah.
and then they'd provide some education, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I went to a whole bunch of those.
Education.
Right.
Right.
Oh yeah. I
I
used to
mean,
go to those a lot.
up until about 10 years ago, I guess, maybe a little bit more. Sometimes my timeline's a little off, but I've been a nurse for 24 years, and they used to bring us food into the unit. I mean, they would just like shower us with food and like little tchotchkes and stuff. And then they came to a point where the hospital said, okay, you're not allowed to take anything from
Right.
any companies or anything outside of like, I think there's a monetary limit. It's a very small amount.
It was $25 at the
Yeah.
hospitals where I worked.
Yeah. So they kind of cut a lot of that stuff out, like from the hospital end anyway. I don't know about the doctor's office because I don't see what happens there, but
Well, they had the rules, because I've worked both inpatient and outpatient, and so I can compare, at least where I worked. They had the same rule that you're not allowed to accept a gift over $25. And really, truly, it was just frowned on to accept gifts at all. But they did set a
yeah.
limit of $25. Um, but because these were educational dinners, it technically wasn't considered a gift. So it was
Mm-hmm.
allowed.
Well, I've had patients that have offered to give me $50 and $100 before, and I didn't take it. But if they can take that stuff, I should be able to take that. And it
Right.
was just for my good work that they liked, you know.
Yeah.
But I never did. I never did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So interesting.
It sure is. And then she goes on, this year in its report to government, the committee largely sticks to the same advice it has given for decades, to eat less fat and fewer animal products and eat more plant foods for good health. But this decision to keep with the status quo fails to reflect much of the current relevant science. Exceptions include a proposal for a cap on sugar intake, which, in the grand scheme of things, okay. The committee recommends 3 diets to promote better health, again, without accompanying rigorous evidence. 3 diets. I guess I'm not sure what those 3 diets are, because the only one I see is little or no meat and whole grains and vegetables and
Well,
fruit.
they probably had a heart health diet, and they probably had one maybe for obesity. I don't know. I'm just kind of thinking off the
Yeah.
top of my head.
Maybe they'll tell us here in a few.
Yeah.
Usually when we try to guess and then they say it like in the next paragraph.
Yeah.
So we'll look
This
for it.
is, So predictably, there was significant academic pushback against Ty Colts, especially since she is not considered a qualified academic. A petition, 180 academics, to have the article retracted failed, with some suggesting that many had signed the petition without bothering to read it. In response, Teichholz provided a few points of clarification to answer their criticisms. I remember when all that was going on. One consistent criticism also raised by Teichholz is that the majority of the committee members writing these guidelines have significant conflicts of interest, as did most of those who prepared the 2020 guidelines. Indeed, 11 of the 20 members of the 2020 Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee, including the committee chair and vice chair, have links to the International Life Sciences Institute, ILSI, an organization that serves as a front organization for the food and drug industry and which has captured an inordinate influence on the development of global dietary guidelines.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Is that the organization that has its roots in the Seventh-day Adventist Church and promotes the vegetarian and veganism?
I don't know.
That's a good question. I don't
Because I
know.
know that there is a particular institute that was founded there, and everything they promote is vegetarianism. And I could swear, because I know that the Seventh-day Adventist Church originated life sciences. That's why I'm wondering if this is it, because life science, or no, maybe it's nutrition science.
It is. It's nutrition science, and there's
Okay.
a like the governing body for nutritionists. That you're right about that. That's the one. But
Okay,
I don't
maybe
know.
I'm
I'm not
confusing.
sure
Maybe
about this one.
yeah, I might be confusing them.
This says ILSI is a global nonprofit federation committed to improving public and planetary health by, oh geez, guys, I can't read this. I've got to plug in. Oh my gosh. Y'all keep talking. I got to plug in.
All right. So
So let's see.
I can't look anything up either because I'm
The
on my
Dietary
phone. On my phone.
Guidelines Advisory Committee has little interest in producing dietary guidelines that reflect the totality of modern evidence. And this continues to be an abiding concern. And so there is a figure 1.8, and
Oh,
here are the companies. There are
let me
these.
see if I can pull it up.
I'm plugged in now.
I have more limited access to what I can do since I'm on my phone, because I do have the slide for figure 1.8 and I don't see that I can present. So sorry about that, guys.
So
Wow,
let me ask a
didn't know
question
that-
real quick. Is
Yeah.
this so when I plugged into this, I have like this I don't know what it's called, but you can plug things into it in my car. It's like for, the Xbox and stuff. So
Mhm.
is that making too much background noise, or can you all hear that? It's like a hum. Okay.
No, I
I
don't hear
it.
anything.
Okay, good.
So, but
Gosh,
yeah,
so I didn't realize that Keurig and Dr. Pepper were the same company now.
Oh.
Yeah, if you look on page 44, you see like there's Bayer, PepsiCo, Coca-Cola,
Yeah.
DuPont. These are like companies that are a part of this. And sure enough, it's got Keurig, Dr.
I'm
Pepper.
gonna see if I can actually show, at least on my phone, what this figure. Oh, it would help if I had the book right.
Yeah.
This doesn't show very well, but this is basically this is figure 1.8, and this is the one that I would have been able to present if I was on my computer. I have an actual presentation with it, but it shows the International Life Sciences Institute in the middle, and then all of these branches off of it showing these companies that so the little description here says the International Life Science Institute connections. This is what this figure is: partnership for an unhealthy so let's see, partnership for an unhealthy planet. So how big business interferes with global health policy and science. So this is the origin of where this figure comes from. And it has, let's see, so the branches off of it kind of going like a clock are Kellogg's, Cargill, Abbott, DuPont, Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, Bayer, Keurig and Dr. Pepper, General Mills, Kraft Heinz, ConAgra, Dow, Herbalife. I didn't know Herbalife. That's a diet company or a supplement
Oh,
company,
yeah,
right?
but that's the MLM.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So they're
yeah, it
not
is.
known for being the most,
I just didn't know that they
upstanding.
were associated with this
That
institute.
is a bit surprising to me too.
Yeah, and this company, which I've never heard of,
Yeah, not to me.
Adgen.
There's a lot of documentaries on these MLMs and
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Ajinomoto. I've never heard of them. McDonald's, the infamous Monsanto,
Mm.
Yakult. That's the little probiotic yogurt drinks. Before I was
Oh,
carnivore, I used to get those. Mead Johnson Nutrition, Montella's International, and Red Bull. It's amazing how, like, Red Bull, right?
yeah.
How unhealthy is that?
I always thought Red Bull was associated with like Coca-Cola or something.
I thought it was too, but
Maybe I'm
maybe it's
Yeah.
wrong.
just, it might be distributed by Coca-Cola, but I think it's made in Germany, if I remember right.
Hmm.
I think it's imported.
Yeah. Well, they're listed here separately, so
Okay,
they're
guys,
not.
it's like 6:30. We wanna read a little bit further?
Why don't you do the one that next section,
Okay.
and because it's small, and then we'll pick up the yeah, and then we'll call it a wrap.
Okay, 1.3.8.1 Summary of the Adoption and Evolution of the Dietary Guidelines. In summary, this review of some forgotten historical material establishes that the USDA dietary goals for Americans were never based on hard evidence, but rather, as a number of scientists and clinicians testified already in 1977, on the assumption that the fullness of time, expensive clinical trials then being considered by the NIH and AHA would fully vindicate Key's diet heart hypothesis. Unfortunately, that evidence has never been forthcoming. Instead, even though these guidelines have been responsible for global obesity type 2 epidemics, they have changed hardly at all in the past 44 years.
Yeah.
And there's one more sentence.
I don't have one more sentence.
On the
The
next
next
page.
page.
The next page.
Just like where is
I
it?
guess
Where is
they had to have room for that little graph. Okay. The unproven, indeed disproven belief in the diet heart and lipid hypotheses and consequent fear that saturated fats are uniquely harmful must be avoided is still alive and well in 2020 and in 2024.
And in 2024. So what I'm hearing from this is that they went ahead and pushed forward these dietary goals with the underlying assumption that the trials proving it would come in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So then where's the incentive to conduct the trials?
Well, yeah, that's true because I mean you've already gotten your way now, so why spend the money on the trials? And I mean they've had
Yeah.
some obviously that
The
have,
bottom line is the American public is the trial.
yeah,
Oh yeah.
you are the guinea pig.
We
We're
are
the
the
guinea pigs.
We
experiment.
are the guinea pigs.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Wow.
So that's, and I'm assuming that that's just the way that it works when it comes to anything nutrition related, is that, we're the guinea pig. And it seems to me too as though, even though the trial with us as guinea pig has obviously failed, the incentive to make that known is not there, because they're so vested in
Yeah.
our current nutrition, and the food industry. They're so vested. So yeah.
Mm.
So the bottom line is it's going to be up to us as consumers to turn the tide here.
And it looks like the next section is going to start the 6 goals proposed by the McGovern Commission. So that's going to be quite a long.
Mhm.
Do we want to? Let's see. How long is that? That's going to be pretty darn long.
Oh yeah. Well, everything about this book is long.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I was just trying to figure out if we should stop here or continue. My son's not out here yet, so I mean, I can go a little bit further if you guys want.
Yeah,
It's up to
that's
y'all.
fine. Yeah.
Okay. 1.3.9, the 6 goals proposed by the McGovern Commission. Let me get my glasses back on. We come finally to an analysis and criticism of the 6 diet goals, which it is argued are the direct cause of the massive human suffering that the adoption of these guidelines have caused on a global scale. Some have even likened the consequences of this dietary advice to a form of slow genocide.
Wow.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, that's quite a
Mhm.
statement.
I agree.
But not untrue.
Yeah. 1.3.9.1, goal number 1, increase carbohydrate consumption to account for approximately 55 to 60% of the total caloric intake. The problem: this change replaced dietary fat with more dietary carbohydrates. The result: dietary carbohydrates do not satiate, they drive hunger. Humans began to eat more calories, becoming fatter. Once the McGovern Committee had decided that humans must eat less fat, it had to choose replacement foods for all those lost calories. The scientists of the 1960s presumed that humans would simply replace the fat with more protein, since increasing carbohydrate consumption would likely promote obesity. Wow.
They knew that back then.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But the unqualified enthusiasts who drew up the 1977 USDA DGA dietary guidelines for Americans assumed they knew best. In their ignorance, they were unaware of a large body of evidence linking increased carbohydrate consumption with the development of obesity and type 2 diabetes. For example, in an editorial in The Lancet in 1926, carried the statement that it is the starchy carbohydrate foods rather than the more quickly and readily metabolized fats which are responsible for much of the elementary type of obesity. A leading textbook of endocrinology published in 1951 provided this dietary advice for the obese: complete restriction of bread and everything made of flour, cereals, potatoes, sweets, and in general, any food containing much sugar, quote unquote. It is continued: you, the obese, can eat as much as you like of the following foods: meat, fish, birds, green vegetables, eggs, cheese, and unsweetened fruit, except for bananas and grapes. Wow.
So bananas and grapes are very high in sugar.
Wow, you guys, this is like, I mean, every time I hear stuff like this, I'm just like, oh my gosh, they knew. Like, what?
They knew.
How did we veer off track so hard?
But I think the key here is that they assumed, right? It says here that they presumed that humans
Yeah.
would replace the fat with more protein. But were they really that naive to think that they wouldn't need to make that part of their marketing campaign?
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
Um,
so it makes me wonder if that's what they really wanted, or if they were
hard
just
to
really
say.
naive.
Yeah, playing lip service to it.
Probably that, you know.
Yeah.
In 1953, the New England Journal of Medicine included an article by the leading low carbohydrate diet advocate of the day, New York physician Alfred Pennington. He advocated treatment of obesity as a diet in which carbohydrate alone is restricted and protein and fat are allowed ad libitum, which we call ad lib, which means, you know, as much as you want.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Go with the flow.
Yeah, even the AMA understood this relationship. In his chairman's address in 1957, Dr. Gerald Thorpe said, evidence from widely different sources seems to justify the use of high protein, high fat, low carbohydrate diets for successful loss of excess weight. In 1957, he said,
1957.
oh my gosh. In the same journal in 1963, Gordon et al. Published the paper that inspired Dr. Robert Atkins, MD, to develop the Atkins diet, based specifically on the principles that Gordon and colleagues had developed. Those authors, ignorant of the long history of low carbohydrate diets for the management of obesity and even type 2 diabetes, suggested incorrectly that they had discovered a new concept in the treatment of obesity, specifically that a low carbohydrate intake tends to minimize the storage of fat, so that their diet was planned around the basic concept that its carbohydrate content should be low. They also reported that a diet that restricted carbohydrate intake to a maximum of 50 grams per day produced dramatic weight losses of up to 45 kilograms, which is 100 pounds, without the development of hunger. They also noted that the weight reductions reversed once subject returned to their original high carbohydrate diets. Gee, it's almost as if the high carbohydrates were causing the weight gain. Anyway.
Yeah.
Who'd have thunk?
Who would have known? But the challenge that the nutritional novices on the McGovern committee faced was that the agricultural product it was promoting, maize or corn, is protein poor and carbohydrate rich. So it had no choice. Humans would have to eat more carbohydrates and less protein. For three simple biological reasons, the ultimate deleterious consequences of McGovern's committee dietary advice were predictable.
Okay. So basically, that the committee was promoting corn.
Well,
So therefore, regardless of the evidence,
yeah.
Americans needed to eat.
And why
corn
were they
pops.
why were they promoting this corn? Gee, let's see. Do we remember why they were promoting this corn?
Why were they?
I don't remember. I mean, I know they were subsidizing it.
It was because of the government subsidies.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think actually, didn't it stem from maybe a fear of not enough food or some problems with not enough food? And it was like a good intention kind of thing initially, like most things are. Am I mistaken about that, Carrie? Do you know?
No, I think you're right. And that also extended to wheat too.
Yeah.
Soy.
And now
and soy.
Now we have literally the entire United States, just one giant cornfield going into a wheat field.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Into a soybean field.
Yeah. And all of the products based on those. I've been listening a little bit to Dr. Kiltz and his talking about fertility, not just female, but male fertility.
Uh-huh.
And, he's talking about how it used to be that it really wasn't a challenge for people to get pregnant.
Right.
Yeah.
And, but now it seems like so many people are struggling with getting pregnant, and that he was talking about these products, the soy products, especially, all the phytoestrogens and of course the pesticides and stuff that get onto the crops, and how it's impacting human reproduction, male and female, and of course sugar as well. But it's interesting that we just continue to subsidize these crops,
Yeah.
Well,
that's unfortunate.
yeah. Well, and the vegetarians, even though it seems like sometimes like the vegetarians have a really strong voice, I'm hopeful that that's going to reverse over time, because just looking at Google Trends, the searching for vegetarian diet, vegan diet is trending down, while the carnivore diet searches are trending parabolically up.
Yeah. So, okay. So that lady I was talking to that was the vegan, she was actually complaining because Whole Foods no longer has the vegan section. I was like, they don't?
Interesting.
I thought that's all that was a bunch of vegan stuff.
Me too. Of course, I never go in there.
So I got to thinking, and I thought, you know what? Amazon owns Whole Foods now. So I bet you anything that had an influence on, on what they're carrying. But I mean, that's just a guess. I don't know. But I just thought it was funny because I'm like, really? Like, I feel like it's just the opposite.
Yeah, definitely. So Amy says, remember the 70s, all the shortages. Look at where we are now. So many shortages of different things at different times in the last 4 years. Yeah, I mean, and of course, the supply chain issues are not helping for sure, you know.
Yeah. All right. My son is headed towards the truck now, so
Okay, well,
I
we will
probably,
pick up.
I
We
guess
will.
this is a good place to stop anyway.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, we're going to pick up next week at biological reality number 1. Humans have no essential requirement for carbohydrate. That sounds like a good one.
Okay,
That does
guys.
sound like a good one.
Yep. All right. Well, I will
Well,
go ahead and end it. Thank you guys. We have a goodbye from Brenda. We didn't even say hi to Brenda. Hi and bye, Brenda.
Bye and bye.
okay, bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye,
All right.